This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Let's get it on. Welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily for Thursday, game day. The rematch tonight between the Jets and the Edmonton Oilers in Edmonton. This time as the Jets start a quick back-to-back out west, and the Oilers come home for the first time since an extended road trip that ended with a 5-2 loss here in the Peg on Tuesday night. We've got a great show coming up. Brandon Rewucki, our good friend, the host of the Skates and Plates podcast, is going to jump on. We'll kick around a number of the top Jets and NHL topics with Rue, and then check in on the Manitoba Moose, who are back home, about to start a homestand tonight at Canada Life Centre. The voice of the Manitoba Moose, the Fink himself, Daniel Fink, joins us after Rewucki, and then more on the Jets-Oilers rematch tonight with handsome Tommy Gazzola in Edmonton. Will join us a little later on. Big welcome to everyone that's joining us a little earlier than we normally broadcast on YouTube. Appreciate everyone joining us. And if you're popping in at 1 o'clock and wondering why the show's already posted, we had to work around something this afternoon. So we started off a little earlier. Hopefully a few new people are joining us. And if you are normally a podcast listener, you haven't been able to check out the YouTube program, great to have you with us. Do us a favor, hit the thumbs up and hit the red subscribe button and join us on a daily basis. Normally 99 times out of 100 live at 1 p.m. on YouTube, but today a little earlier. So welcome to everybody, and welcome to all the sponsors that make Winnipeg Sports Talk happen, including Vita Health Fresh Market, Culligan Water, Manitoba Battery, Not Autocorp, Royal Sports, Little Brown Jug Brewing, Princess Auto, Boston Pizza, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Canadian Club Whiskey, and our betting partners over at Coolbet Canada. Of course, we do have an NFL Thursday Nighter tonight, Pats and Falcons. We'll maybe spend some time on that towards the end of the program, but it's all about the pucks today and lots of excitement heading into this rematch tonight. Let's get Michael Remis into the program. Well, I welcome everyone into the YouTube chat. What's going on, everybody? Yes, iHeart Gaming. A little early today, getting a couple good mornings. I know we don't normally do it this early, but as I said, had to do it today. Appreciate everyone accommodating the schedule and joining us live here on YouTube a couple hours earlier than we normally do it. Michael Remis, good morning. What's up?
Yeah, good morning. I got my my coffee here. I got my mug. A bit of a different, shorter morning for us setting this up, but it's good. I'm happy. We're ready to go. I see a lot of excitement about round two. It feels like we're in the Canadian division again. I think people are fired up to see the Jets and the Oilers, to see Connor McDavid. I tweeted out that the picture yesterday, the one that's in the thumbnail of this video on YouTube, about my caption was, when you find out you have to play against Pionk again Thursday, and tons of reactions. So, I was saying to you off air, like, Thursday night game or against like San Jose, like it was last week, maybe doesn't generate the interest that, back-to-backs against the Edmonton Oilers and Connor McDavid get. So I think a lot of people are fired up to see if the Jets can win 2 in a row here against the team that was number 1 in ESPN's power rankings.
I was about to say, yeah, I mean, hey, it's not just a big Thursday night game in Canada. The Jets get another crack at the number 1 team in ESPN's power ranking.
Yeah.
And maybe they can chip away at the huge distance they have to get to the top teams in the league. Many of you will be aware of this already, but yesterday, sort of after we finished our program, ESPN, I believe it's Kristen Shilton, who of course was with TSN all those years, dropped the NHL power rankings from 1 to 32. And, with the way the Jets had playing themselves into first place, beating the Edmonton Oilers on Tuesday, I think everyone was looking to see just how high the Jets could be. They were 12th in the last power poll a week ago. They went 3-0. They beat the team that's at number 1. How close could they get? Well, they dropped 8 spots. The Jets are 20th in this power poll. Now, again, this is a fun conversation, and power polls basically are made to create discussion and get people talking. And needless to say, this one absolutely did. RIP the mentions of Kristen. And I almost feel bad because I don't think Greg Wyshynski was involved in the power poll. Certainly wouldn't be the guy that had final say on it. But I did do my tweet going, exactly how does this happen? And tag Kristen and Wish. And needless to say, my mentions have been blowing up since I posted that. So I can't imagine what theirs are because I certainly wasn't the only one that posted out. It is somewhat strange, Remis. And I was on TSN 1260 this morning with Dusty and Eric, and having some fun talking about the series and the game. And I did sort of mention this. And, we've talked about the Jets being an overlooked team for a long time, certainly from a betting perspective, which has always been to the benefit of us. I mean, sometimes, you like to, hey, over here, check out the team. But in some ways, at least if you're betting, it's actually been a great thing because we always seem to get a better number on the Jets than they probably should get because of where they're at. That being said, Reem, I think Winnipeg Jet fans were absolutely bent about this because this team has played their way into first place in the Central Division. And yet, when you look at the power rankings, they're 5th in the Central and 20th in the National Hockey League. And I think just about anyone that's been paying attention to the Winnipeg Jets over the past week, over the past month, really since the first week of the season, would say they are not in the bottom tier of the National Hockey League. In fact, probably on the other end of it, challenge the top teams, as we saw them take out the team that's number 1 on this list, the Edmonton Oilers, in pretty convincing fashion Tuesday night.
Yeah, I mean, these power polls are made-up rankings, but I mean, ESPN is a pretty well-respected website. They're the rights holder of the NHL, and I like Kristen. We had her on the old station. But for her to put the Jets at number 20 when they're 1, here, I'll bring up if you want to go by like points percentage, you can go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the league in points percentage. And they just beat, this is the day after they beat Edmonton, and they're moving down the ESPN's power poll. So, I mean, I don't know what to say. It doesn't make any sense. We've watched them play, and we've just talked about how the Jets are quietly putting this 9-3-3 record together, 21 points, leading the division. And to be honest, they haven't even played their last game was their best game, but they haven't played up to the potential that we thought that they could heading into the season. But I mean, you can't argue with first in the Central Division here.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think I would say, through 15 games, I think that they have played up to the potential. I mean, hey, they're in first place right now. They've lost 3 games in regulation all season, and 2 of them were the first 2 games of the year. I mean, Murat had a great piece yesterday after he joined us, and I suggest people go check it out. Talking about the things that the Winnipeg Jets are doing better this year. And we'll get into this with Rewucki in a few minutes. They are certainly defending better. They are far better at getting the puck out of their own zone. They're still deadly on the rush. They're still spending a good amount of time in the opponent's zone. I mean, the one thing that I think, and Murat touches on this and spoke with Paul Maurice about it, the one thing where they could be better and I think would like to improve is creating chances off the cycle. And really the times that the Winnipeg Jets have had the most difficulty, at least just, fresh in our minds over the course of this homestand, was 2 games in particular. It was the New York Islander game when Barry Trotz's crew scored in the first 5 minutes of the game and then just squeezed the Winnipeg Jets. Had no problem having them in the zone, but just didn't let them get off the wall. And it was the same thing for the most part of that Los Angeles game on last Saturday night. Now, of course, Dylan DeMello was the hero, scoring that shorthanded goal, getting into overtime. Mark Scheifele won it, and the Jets were able to mine 2 points out of a game that they really had some tough times offensively. But overall, Reem, that is something that I'm sure they can, look at. But when you look at the other things that they're doing well this year, and we haven't even talked about the guy between the pipes who always gives you a chance to win. I think this is the team that a lot of people were hoping to see. And of course, the biggest part of that, and I'm looking forward to hearing what Rewucki's got to say about Pierre-Luc Dubois' performance so far this year, is the fact that this is not just a one-center team when it comes to scoring. I mean, Dubois has been so good. I think arguably he has been the number one center, especially considering the time that Mark Scheifele has missed so far, despite scoring the last couple of games. So I think a lot of the things that Kevin Cheveldayoff envisioned that his team would be capable of when he made the offseason acquisitions, particularly of the guys on the blue line, were sort of coming to fruition right now. And we saw a great example of that on Tuesday night. And I can't wait to see this game tonight, the rematch, because, and I can take it from me. I was just on TSN 1260 in Edmonton with Dusty and Eric, as I mentioned. Been listening to quite a bit of the show. I mean, Neil Pionk might be rent-free in Connor McDavid. Ted, the Winnipeg Jets, I think right now are rent-free in much of the Edmonton Oilers fan base after Tuesday night, of course, coming off the very brief appearance by Edmonton in the playoffs last year, thanks to a 4-game sweep to the Jets.
Yeah, and I know it's different teams, but I think a lot of the core pieces are the same. And for them to lose 5 in a row now to the Jets, even though each of those 4 games last year were the slimmest of margins, and the Oilers did dominate the Jets in the regular season, but I don't know if they've figured out how to stop Edmonton, or Connor Hellebuyck has just been playing absolutely out of his mind. But I agree. I think you definitely saw the frustration from Edmonton. I mean, when you have these grade A chances like Puljujarvi did, or a Draisaitl before he was able to score against Connor Hellebuyck, and he's kicking out the leg and all that stuff, it's pretty demoralizing trying to score over and over. Like, what do we got to do? And I think that's what it was in the playoffs. And I mean, that's what it was. But again, the Oilers have, so their best guy is McDavid, and the Jets, I think it's clear the Jets' best guy is Hellebuyck. And I mean, we're going to see that tonight. And of course, staying out of the box going to be key. And we'll see, how the refs decide to officiate the game, sadly, is going to have an impact, because the Oilers power play so deadly, and the Jets penalty kill, as I just read in the ESPN power rankings, not as good. And just one more thing with the power rankings. I mean, we joke here about how Winnipeg gets no respect from, as you said, the odds makers. I mean, what are they, like 30-1 to win the cup right now, or 35-1?
34 yesterday on the program.
And, even before the year. And, we talk about how when, someone does an illegal hit against a Jets player and it doesn't get noticed, and if someone does the same hit against a Toronto player, they'll get, the Department of Player Safety. It's just as another proving the point again that, the Jets could literally be first in the standings. And on some webs on ESPN, the national broadcaster in the U.S., their website puts a power poll together. And even Chris Chilton, she's in Canada.
The day after they beat the number one team on the list, finishing up a perfect week after being 12th the week before.
Now, I'd like to think that she submitted that before, the day before, but still, it's not a good. I don't know. We're all here, it's just power rankings. It really doesn't mean anything. But, if you're trying to say, okay, the Jets, are you saying the Jets are the 20th best team in the league right now?
Well, how do you start at 12, go 3-0, and go down?
Yeah.
Let's just start there. They think they went 0-3? Maybe there was a typo, and they were accumulating the information and the data from last week. It was reversed. If they had gone 0-3 last week, maybe I could see them dropping from 11 to 20. However, going 3-0 and beating the number one team on the list would be it. Well, in fact, now that I think about it, let's just see. They beat San Jose, LA, and Edmonton last week.
Yeah.
So Edmonton's number one on the list. The Kings are number 12. The Kings took the Jets spot at 12. And the San Jose Sharks are 16. So they went 3-0 against teams that were all ahead of them in this week's power poll, including the number one team, and ended up last.
Yeah.
The one thing that I love to see, though, and this is part of the reason why I tweeted it out, I mean, these sort of things are there to get discussion and they're fun conversations. But I'll tell you what, I mean, a lot of the chatter we hear on social media just generally is negative. And I think a lot of people that are sort of positive have sort of just kind of stayed away or backed off a little bit because of maybe some of the blowback they get from some of the louder, more angry people online. But this is the sort of thing that in some ways does galvanize a fan base. And I went and checked out the comments on my tweet, but more importantly, the tweet that came out originally. And there were dozens, if not a few hundred tweets back from Jet fans that, I mean, it got them a little riled up. And I'll tell you what, that's not a bad thing right now to have some people, I think, rallying around the hockey team right now when it's playing well. It's been a tough time. I don't think people have felt very close together over the course of the last couple months or a couple of years. And I'll tell you what, if an egregious oversight by the national broadcaster in the United States can sort of amp up a fan base that should be amped up right now with the way their hockey team's playing, I'll tell you what, I'm here for it, and I have no issue pouring a little gas on the fire here on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Yeah, speaking of gas on the fire, I mean, we're talking about McDavid versus Pionk. You did bring up something that on TSN 1260, and I'm just like, oh crap. I mean, what if Neil Pionk is playing so well, plays himself onto Team USA, and they see how he's playing this year and be like, we need him to go up against Connor McDavid in the Olympics.
I'm worried. It could blow up. It could totally blow up our Canadian Olympic dreams. Neil Pionk and the American blue line completely neutralizing Connor McDavid in Beijing. And there it goes. I mean, the goaltending issue number one for Team Canada, the potential of Neil Pionk being on the U.S. blue line to me is now, you want a power poll? That's number two on Canadian worries right now for Beijing. The neutralizer himself, the Pionky Tonk man, getting ready to take on Connor McDavid. We are having a little bit of fun of this, and a lot of it does go back to the rent-free tweet, which I do remember you putting out at the beginning of this week, Reem, saying, I figured this might be a good time to boost this tweet. And in some ways, it's sort of become a self-fulfilling prophecy because Pionk was such a big part of that playoff series. And lo and behold, what happened at the end of Tuesday's game? Oilers pressing and McDavid taking a bad penalty, going into the box for 2 minutes. And I mean, really, in a lot of ways, sort of ending their opportunity to get back in the hockey game. And I'd be lying if I didn't hear. I mean, there was a number of rent-free references in Edmonton this morning on the station with the guys, not made by me, made by people texting in and even people on the show right now. So it is a thing. It is a thing going into Thursday night, and another great opportunity for Pionk in particular and the Jets blue line to show that even with the success they had against this team last year in the playoffs, they're a much, much better back end. And it's going to be that much harder to score at the Winnipeg Jets on 5-on-5 as the Oilers were able to get a grand total of 0 Tuesday night.
Yeah, and I think that, again, that's the key for the game. Keep it at 5-on-5. When we saw what the power play looked like from the Oilers, I mean, they can move the puck. They got the two guys. McDavid moves around. Draisaitl's ripping shots on the right side. Swap in Barry for Nurse. Hyman. I mean, this is a really strong power play. So being out of the box is definitely going to be key. And I think the Jets have shown they know how to get under McDavid's skin. And I like watching him. He's the best player in the league. Although Draisaitl has more points right now, but when he's going up against the Jets, I mean, you are a bit nervous that he could, score at basically any time. But I think they seem to have figured it out, and hopefully they can keep it going here tonight. Someone asked about the Jets lines. They are going. Justin Fung asked if I'm a bigger troll than Ryan. That's pretty funny.
Whoa! Come on.
Yeah, come on. That's
I might have to fire another bozo blast with a comment like that, Justin. Come on. And Ryan was the recipient of the first one yesterday on the program.
Yeah. So I forget what I was saying, but I'm looking forward to tonight's game.
Yeah,
I had a good point I was going to make, but I lost my reading the chat and talking is not a good recipe here.
Focus, Remis. Yeah. I know we're starting a little earlier than normal, but we need the game face on. It's like a matinee game. A lot of those times those games are duds. This show not going to be a dud. This isn't going to be a Sunday afternoon 2 p.m. after much of the visiting team went out till 3 a.m. We are ready to, and I'll tell you what, the multiple blow dryers back at the Rewucki HQ are working overtime, but I do believe he's just about ready to come on, so we will get to that. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, someone asked about the Jets lines. They're skating out at 12:30 our time, 11:30 in Edmonton. I'm assuming it's going to be the same unless someone shoots a puck and knocks out someone's teeth in practice, and then that person has to leave. Which did happen earlier this week with Dominic Toninato, so you never know. But I'm assuming it's going to be the same for the Jets.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of those guys don't even take the morning skate. We've seen that quite a bit over the course of the season. But Wheeler, Connor, Dubois, Scheifele, Ehlers, and Kopp, Svech, Harkins, and Lowry. And then a fourth line of Riley Nash, Dominic Toninato, of course, and Christian Vesalainen. That is the way that it will work. I mean, I'm still waiting to see. I mean, the only one thing that really does look sort of out of place right now is Riley Nash on one of those power play units. But again, if that's the biggest issue that we've got right now, it was like bitching about the backup goalie before the season even started. Good problems to have right now for the Winnipeg Jets. All right, Rewucki's coming up next. I do want to thank our newest sponsor, Vita Health Fresh Market, for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. If you've never been to Vita Health, what are you waiting for? Well, you certainly had an opportunity. Family-owned business for 85 years, empowering people to live healthy lives in Manitoba since 1936. 7 locations in Winnipeg, including the newest store in Linden Ridge. And when you get to Vita Health Fresh Market, you will find Winnipeg's best selection of local, organic, and natural groceries, supplements, vitamins, and beauty products, all at great prices, with an amazingly knowledgeable staff trained in these products to help you get what's right for you and your needs. Of course, November is Men's Health Month, and Vita Health carries products to support prostate, energy, libido, stress management, and more. And if you're into local organic produce, grass-fed meats, and more, or a great grab-and-go deli with Vita Market salads and sandwiches, which are phenomenal, this is the store for you. Pop on down and see them at any of the 7 Winnipeg locations, or check them out online at myvita.ca. And while we're eating healthy and getting great products and supplements from Vita Health, before you do any of that, you got to start with making sure that you're hydrated. And our friends at Culligan Water have been the water experts and the go-to people for all things H2O for 65 years. Of course, family-owned in Winnipeg, over at 1200 Sargent. Culligan Water has it all. Water softeners and filters, whole home systems, drinking water systems, bottled water coolers, and bottle-free coolers, not to mention water delivery services citywide. I know Remis just got a nice delivery of a bunch of jugs. He's set for a few weeks, and they'll do that at your business as well. Commercial and industrial water products and solutions. Let the Culligan man and the experts over at Culligan Water take care of all of your water needs. Give them a call at 204-694-5180. Visit them at 1200 Sargent, or find out more on what Culligan can do for you at drinkculligan.com. And I got an email from our pal Donnie over at Manitoba Battery. The guys have been busy. People realize they've been listening to Winnipeg Sports Talk and knows, man, I've been putting this off. You know it's getting cold soon. So big rush on automotive batteries right now. They've got the best prices in town, $89.50 with pickup, $15 off with the $15 off the $109.50 delivered battery with your return of the core. But for the rest of November, great product, a great promo for some of the people that have done so much for us through the pandemic. Manitoba Battery, if you're a frontline or a healthcare worker and you do need a battery, for the rest of the month of November, Manitoba Battery will thank the frontline and healthcare workers by paying the taxes on any automotive battery for those who help get through the challenges of COVID. And of course, the snow is here as well. It's more than just automotive batteries. They've got batteries for everything. And with the snow here, they've got your sled battery needs covered. Whatever type of sled you have, Manitoba Battery's got you covered. Most sled batteries can be found in the $65 to $75 range. Give them a call at 204-783-8787. You can visit them at 1026 Logan Avenue, or you can find out more online at manitobabattery.com. All right. The team of industrial hair dryers are finished, and our friend Brandon Rewucki, the host of the Skates and Plates podcast, joins us now, looking like $1 million US tax-free. It's been a while, my friend. Great to have you back on the show. What's going on?
Hey, what's up, brother? Good to talk to you again. Yeah, I'll apologize too to any anyone living in the River Heights area, there was a power outage 2 days ago. So I've switched to battery-powered hair dryers now. There won't be another incident like that anytime soon. So we're good moving forward, my man.
Was it Sunday night that you had the power outage? Did you get it as well? I know we don't live too far away.
Monday or Tuesday. I think it was Monday. Yeah.
Man, Sunday, I was saying this on the back. I went out in the afternoon on Sunday, popped into one of my favorite spots, ostensibly to say hi to a couple of people. Ended up having a pretty good afternoon. Got home responsibly. Big day on Monday. Had a fun NFL Sunday. Chiefs Raiders playing tonight. Got home. The lights were out. Everything was out. All right, I guess I'm going right back out to watch the night games. Thank God the game was good. But speaking of good games, I know you spoke about this on the latest edition of Skates and Plates coming out of Tuesday's game. I know I was so excited about this series, considering what happened in the playoffs, considering what the Oilers have done so far. And I got to tell you, Brandon, that was quite the performance by the Winnipeg Jets, starting with Connor Hellebuyck, but right through the lineup. A very deserving 2 points and a big 2 points and a hell of a way to finish a very successful homestand.
Yeah, it's funny because you had the sweep of the Oilers in the playoffs last year, and this was by far the most dominant performance the Jets have had against Edmonton in quite some time. I mean, any way you look at it, 5-on-5, even the special teams. I know Edmonton scored a couple power play goals, but, kind of gift wrapped a 5-on-3 there, and not much you could do with McDavid and Draisaitl on a 5-on-3 for 2 minutes or 6 seconds. But all in all, I mean, the Jets were just A+ in every category, weren't they? I mean, they pretty much all game long kept Edmonton away from any dangerous scoring areas. And when Connor Hellebuyck is like the 10th most important player on your team on a given night, yeah, the Jets are going to be just fine. And I thought that was maybe the most promising performance, too, that the club has had all season long. Because, look, the blueprint and the formula is there right now. There's no reason they can't play like that basically every night moving forward. And if they do, hey, maybe first place at a division title isn't all that outlandish, even with Colorado's, resurgence about to come anytime soon.
Well, before we kind of dive into this rematch tonight, I mean, we're 15 games in, and I think that's a pretty good measure of, what we had hoped to see, what was expected, what Kevin Cheveldayoff was hoping to achieve with the offseason acquisitions. And I mean, as we mentioned off the top of the program, the first couple of games were a little ugly, and you certainly didn't like the results. But my God, Brandon, I mean, they've had points in 12 of the last 13 games. They pushed themselves into first place. And in so many aspects of the game, the Winnipeg Jets seem like a much better, more complete team this year. But let's start with the blue line, because, I mean, God knows we spent a lot of oxygen over the course of the summer talking about needs on the blue line. And then, once Schmidt and Dillon were acquired, there was about 2 months of just really excitement and anticipation, I think, by most members of the fan base. And I got to tell you, so far, so good. And not only have those players played so well, but I think they've really added. Neil Pionk was probably our best guy last year, and he's continued to play at a high level. Josh Morrissey looks like an entirely new player this year compared to the struggles that he'd had last year. They're off in the blue line. Just your thoughts on what these players have brought in and how different this unit looks as opposed to the one that struggled quite a bit for the most of last season.
Yeah, you can make the case the Jets acquired 3 top 4 defensemen this past offseason with Schmidt, Dillon, and Josh Morrissey, right? And I don't think it was necessarily all Josh Morrissey's fault that his play had been, I guess, below the standards we've expected out of him when he was with Jacob Trouba. But the Jets, after the big exodus of talent a few years ago, they basically asked Josh Morrissey to be Victor Hedman. And guess what? There's one Victor Hedman, right? Like, there's very few people on the planet that can elevate basically anybody beside them into a legitimate top pair or a legitimate top 4 pair. And Josh Morrissey was just asked to do way too much, and he needed some help. And he's gotten that in a big way with Nate Schmidt beside him. It's a tough call to say which pair's been the best out of the 2, honestly, so far this season. Flip a coin if you'd rather have Morrissey, Schmidt, or Dillon and Pionk. But Nate Schmidt has done a great job of both adding support to Josh Morrissey, but I think infusing a much-needed element to the Jets' blue line. And everybody talked about size, physicality, all that. And that's great. The Jets needed it. But they also needed a ton of skill on the blue line, too. I think that's the big part that was missing these past couple of seasons because everyone was so fixated on Buff Trouba Myers being, 6'5", 250 apiece, basically. But all those guys were really, really good with the puck. And Nate Schmidt has brought that element back to the team's blue line. So he's been as good as anybody could have hoped for. I think Brendan Dillon has been the physical man mountain that everybody had hoped he would be. And then you have Neil Rent-Free Pionk playing like an all-star right now. Like it's all been gravy so far. It's pretty wild that all of Kevin Chevalier's moves have paid off this well.
It's funny. I was talking to the guys in Edmonton this morning about this, and they were asking me about Pionk and just the team and how it's different. And I said, 2 years ago when Buff abruptly left, it left. I mean, I'm not sure outside of like a McDavid or someone that you could take one player off a team and have more of an effect on what was missing. And it was a number of things. I mean, the minutes that he ate up, the offense that he brought to the table, the physical, like the imposition that he brought every single time that he was on the ice. And then there was also the sort of off-ice dressing room part where, a leadership group that might have been thought of as a little serious and stiff, had a compliment, if you will, that, would lighten things up. And it took a while, Brandon, and it took $10 million and 2 players.
Yeah.
But I really do think that between what Schmidt's brought to the team and what Dillon's brought to the team, a lot of those things that the Jets had been missing from Dustin Byfuglien have been replaced. But as we know, there's only one Buff, and it took 2 guys to kind of bring those things that were lacking back in. Are you buying what I'm selling?
100%. I said that before the season, actually, that it's just like a scrum with Buff, too. It takes 2. It takes 2 in the scrum, and then it takes 2 to replace what he brings you on the ice and in the dressing room. So, yeah, I think we were Jets fans were so fortunate to have a guy like Dustin Byfuglien for so long, and you almost take him for granted at what a unique talent and player that he was, because I don't know, it might be another 10, 15 years before we see another guy like Dustin Byfuglien in the NHL, let alone here in Winnipeg. So it is funny, but I totally agree with you that Schmidt does the skill and the off-ice aspect, and then Brendan Dillon does provide that much-needed grit, nastiness on the back end. And he's got a decent amount of skill too, right? He's not just a big plug back there. He's not afraid to get up into the rush. And boy, oh boy, has he ever been kind of the perfect complement to what Neil Pionk brings.
Well, I am with you on that. And as impressive as I've been with Nate Schmidt and how he's played, and certainly Josh Morrissey, or Movechkin, as they like to call him, with his new one-timer that he worked on through the summer. I'm with you. I mean, I think Neil Pionk has been criminally underrated league-wide since he came here. He was underrated when he got here. I mean, a lot of people had very low expectations. Oh, this is the guy that they had to take because, of the Trouba trade. And, signing him, I mean, already that contract looks great. I mean, 15 games in. But playing with Brendan Dillon and not having to have Neil Pionk really do, I mean, he'll be the catalyst for it all, but to have that sort of support, I think has given him even more confidence. And it takes us back to the end of last game. I mean, how uncharacteristic of that is a frustrated Connor McDavid doing something like a borderline cheap shot on a player and at a terrible time in a hockey game when, because of the power play, they had got right back in it. And there's Neil Pionk thanking him for coming out, reminding him who's the boss as he goes to the penalty box, and essentially ended Edmonton's opportunity to really press that game into the final couple minutes.
Yeah, just imagine 2 years ago saying Neil Pionk is going to be shutting down McDavid so much that frustration will boil over and he takes it, right? Like, it's crazy. But, and I don't think this is hyperbole either, but man, I think Neil Pionk defends McDavid about as well as anybody in the NHL. I mean, on the rush, it's really, really difficult to not give up something when McDavid gets going. But I think Neil Pionk does as good of a job as anybody as skating with them. And I mean, it's pretty evident the frustration isn't going to boil over if McDavid has 4 points at that point of the third period. He and the Oilers were having a lot of difficulty generating chances there. And that's what led to the penalty. And you know what? Give Adam Lowry some credit too, because he did the same thing to Leon Draisaitl a period earlier. And he spent 4 minutes in the box, right? So it's pretty wild now that our past 5 games against the Edmonton Oilers, Winnipeg Jets have maybe done as good of a job as any team in the entire league at slowing down the 2 most prolific scorers in the sport.
The funny thing is, though, I mean, and I was spending some time, yesterday thinking about this and comparing the games, because while I will always pump up and never forget the 4-game sweep over Edmonton, considering how my childhood was terrorized by the hockey team from that city. And I do think they missed the boat not having a commemorative mini broom giveaway at Tuesday's game with the scores of all of the games. In reality, when you look back, that was the closest 4-game sweep of all time. I mean, 3 games were in overtime, the razor thin margin between each one. I didn't have that feeling on Tuesday. And again, the game flipped in, whatever it was, half a minute with the 5-on-3 power play and those 2 goals that, made it an exciting third period with the Oilers pressing. But that game, I think, showed more than anything, Brandon, just how much the Winnipeg Jets have improved as a full hockey team from top to bottom. Because, I mean, there was never a game the Jets controlled in the 4-game sweep, much like they did certainly through the first 40 minutes Tuesday night.
Yeah, like it's fun trolling Oilers fans over what happened last spring, but Connor Hellebuyck did have a .950 save percentage. Like he had a minor role in keeping Edmonton off the board. And if you're a believer in the analytics, the Jets were awful in that regard during the series. Like Edmonton consistently outchanced, outshot, basically out everything them, except Connor Hellebuyck was the defining factor. But like I mentioned earlier, I don't know, Hellebuyck was maybe the 10th most important Jet the other night, right? Like he was good, but the Jets didn't really need him to be anything other than solid. And that goes a long way. And it kind of goes back to my other point that, if Connor Hellebuyck is a quote unquote supporting piece for the Winnipeg Jets because of how well they're playing up front and on the blue line this season, the sky's the limit, man. It's kind of exciting. I know we're not even 20 games in, but it is hard not to look ahead a little bit and think, hey, maybe playoff contender is kind of the floor of this team. Maybe it is a little bit higher. Maybe they can get into the top 5, top 6, top 7 in the entire NHL with just how well they've played, especially in these last 5 or 6 games.
Well, to be honest, right now, I'm just thinking about the West, and you think about the way they played against Edmonton. Edmonton's been the best team in the Pacific Division. The Jets are in first place right now. We'll see what becomes of the Colorado Avalanche as this team comes by. I know they've had some injuries. They've had some COVID issues. They haven't had a great start, but they're still the Stanley Cup favorite to win. We do expect them to be there. But the bottom line is you to look from the goaltender out with the blue line improvements, the way the forwards are playing, the lines, and we're going to get to PLD in a minute. And then you add in a goaltender like Hellebuyck playing at a Vezina level. Why can't the Jets beat anybody? That I think is what it comes down to. There's no team right now that the Winnipeg Jets go into thinking that they have no chance to win. Although the one thing there has been, before we get to PLD, I want to ask you about this. Stylistically, I think the Jets they're better defensively. They're much better at getting the puck out of their own end. They've always been good on the rush, but they have had a difficulty with teams like the Islanders and even the Kings on Saturday night. They'll get the puck into the zone, but they have been pushed to the edge. And I said to the guy I was sitting with on Saturday night, I don't think the Jets have had the puck in the King zone outside of 3 feet from the boards for the last hour of the hockey game. And it seems, and Murata, as I mentioned, and check out this latest piece in The Athletic, spoke about that. The one thing that they would like to be able to do more is generate things out of the cycle. But if that's the only thing that you're really worried about improving, you're probably in a pretty good spot. And all you need to do is look at the standings. And that is where the Jets find themselves right now.
Yeah, and Murad did have a great article kind of detailing that. And that Islanders game was maybe, outside of the first couple games this season, the Islanders one's the lone stinker they've had in maybe a month, right? Like that was the one game where you're like, maybe would have hoped for a little bit more punch and a little bit more impact. But again, yeah, that's an okay problem to have, right?
Well, they got trotzed in that game. I said, I was at the game and they scored, what was it, 3.5 minutes into the game. And I said to Murray that I'm with, I'm like, dude, any other team in the league that would score early and be like, hey, whatever, there's lots of time left, we'll see what happens. But I did say, this is the last team you want to give up an early goal to. Watch these guys just squeeze them like a python for the next 55 minutes. And that's exactly what happened in that game.
Yeah, for any footy fans out there, park the bus Jose Mourinho style. That's what the Islanders love to do. But hey, look, there's 2 things with the Islanders. One, they're going to do that to a lot of teams, right? Like they're not, I don't know if people still respect them as much as they should, but they are one of the best teams in the NHL, the premier defensive team in the NHL. So they're going to do that to a lot of teams, make a lot of teams look inept offensively. But the key to when you play a team like that really clogs the middle of the ice in their own zone is patience. And it's kind of a one-off there, so it's tough to say, is this a trend? Is this going to be a continued problem for Winnipeg all season? I think they'll figure it out as the year goes along. I'm not overly concerned about it, to be honest, especially with, you mentioned PLD and some of the other guys that have really stepped up so far this season. If I honestly wouldn't have said that would be the Jets' biggest problem at any point this year. I would still point to the penalty kill as, issue number one that needs to get fixed and needs to get rectified as soon as possible. But they'll figure things out offensively. They pretty much always have. So, Islanders game aside, I'm not overly concerned about what they do inside the offensive zone.
Yeah. Okay, let's get to Dubois. Changed the number in the offseason. Spent a lot of time working on a number of things, but mostly just to come in confident, ready to be his best. And that wasn't the case last year. But I will make the argument that as much as everyone from the top of the organization to every fan was hoping that Pierre-Luc Dubois would be a much better player, would contribute more, I don't know if anyone could have imagined just how impactful he's been through 15 games. How impressed have you been? And what's really stood out to you about Dubois' game and how different and how much more effective he is really being a driver as, let's call it what it is. So far through 15 games, he's been the number one center on the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I guess what stands out the most to me is just the aggressiveness. And that was missing. And maybe it was just a lack of confidence last year. Like, we all know how literally everything went against him since he came over to Winnipeg. But it's funny that it's basically been the exact opposite this season. He's had so many things working in his favor to put him in position to have a big year, right? He's got the contract year coming up, a full off season, working with, line mates that he's more accustomed to, and having Kyle Connor, who's developed into a superstar beside him right now. It's all kind of become this perfect storm for Dubois to take a step, right? He's even better now than he was when he was with Columbus and giving the Leafs and the Bruins a bunch of fits during the postseason. So I think just how aggressive he's been has been the biggest change for me. I mean, he's going to the net every single chance he gets. I would love to see his shot map for goals, because I can't imagine the average distance is much more than 5 feet, right? Like, that's where he's doing all his damage. And that's where he should be, right? When you're 6'3", 6'4", and 220 plus, like, he should be doing damage in and around the crease. And I think that's been the biggest change so far this season. Than having Kyle Connor on pace for 50 goals beside you, yeah, that's not going to hurt either.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that, because it sort of seems like it's contagious. I mean, as great as Kyle Connor has been, in this season and the way that he's scored goals, other than the empty netter in the last game, his last probably 3 of 4 have all been, never mind 5 feet, have all been with like 18 inches or literally in it. And, he's added that element to the game too. I think maybe playing with Dubois, knowing how much he's going to the net, that there are going to be rebounds. And man, the chemistry that these two have developed together in a relatively short period of time, whether it's Svechnikov or Wheeler, who I thought had a really strong game on that line on Tuesday night. I don't know who we want to say is the driver. All I know is that those two are playing so well together that they are an absolute handful. And if that is the case, not to mention being able to go up against Connor McDavid at 5-on-5 and keep him off the score sheet, what does that mean for Mark Scheifele, Nikolai Ehlers, and Andrew Kopp, a line that, when that other line was made, I was most excited to see, because I think that's a different look for Scheifele, a great opportunity for Ehlers. And there was something to be said about kind of mixing up that group, having Wheeler and Scheifele playing with Adam Lowry and having a more broad top 9. But I'll tell you what, going up against a team like this tonight, where you're going to have to score, this top 6 right now looks about as good as it has been. And a huge part of that is 80 and 81, the way they've been playing together.
Yeah, and this was something that I was kind of curious, and we'll see how it plays out moving forward, because Scheifele's missed a bunch of time. But I would love to see how Mark Scheifele is going to respond to this. And not that Dubois has taken his job or anything like that, but you're right. He's been the best center, maybe the best forward on this entire team so far this season. And now there's kind of a bit of internal competition for Mark Scheifele, right? So I'm curious.
Isn't that what everyone wanted to see too?
Yeah.
For all the knocks, and a lot of people have been critical of Paul Maurice, and I think it's sort of rubbed off. That's why there's been a little bit of negativity on Wheeler. It was almost as if like, well, it's those guys' team and they're always going that. And I think what everyone was hoping to see is that those guys would get pushed and that you would have not just an assumed group that always gets these opportunities, but some of the other talented players kind of getting a chance to challenge them. And whether this would have happened the way it has without, those two players coming down with COVID, we'll never know. But the results of it have been probably an unintended consequence, but something that I think everyone would agree has been very good for the hockey team, including Coach Paul Maurice.
Yeah. And I mean, the balanced forward lines, like you touched on, as much talent as this team has had in the past couple of seasons, that's kind of been a under the radar problem, hasn't it? Like they just don't get a lot of scoring from their bottom six. But now, I mean, you can roll three lines pretty confidently, no matter who you put out there. Right. And even the fourth line can maybe give you something if you tinker when Paul Stastny comes back. So, I mean, offensively, I don't know how much more you could have asked for out of Dubois, out of Connor, Svechnikov as well. And, even a guy like Nick Ehlers, he hasn't been, below average or anything like that, but we haven't really seen him break out all that much. I'd like imagine when Scheifele and Ehlers really start to get going, like then things become kind of spicy up front.
Well, you know what? I mean, I think it sort of started with the OT winner on Saturday night against the Kings. I mean, that was, just such a beautiful play of two guys that have incredible skill. Scheifele's ability to find the open space, Ehlers to get it to him, Scheifele to finish. And I think they really built off that going in the last game. And if all of a sudden that pair, regardless of who they're playing with, although I think we got to give a lot of credit to Andrew Kopp. I mean, he's not an afterthought in the top six. He has been
just a point game.
Yeah, exactly. He's Mr. Dish, man. He's the assist leader right now, playing with those guys. But I mean, if that line comes together and starts clicking like everyone knows they can, and pushing the Dubois, Connor, Wheeler line as it's constituted right now, then you get it. And this is the same thing for the power play unit. And I mean, I assume Paul Stastny will take that Riley Nash spot when they come back. But the power play was the most successful last year when the Ehlers unit was starting to get opportunities and was clicking as well. And this goes back to the conversation we had before about those top two lines. Competition is good. And, if all these players are pushing each other for opportunities and momentum on the ice, that bodes very well for a team going into, this next stretch of games.
Yeah. And I mean, a tough one at Edmonton tonight, right? I mean, that's, you're kind of waiting for the Oilers to break out at some point, right? Like it feels as good as the Jets have been that it's only a matter of time. I'll tell you what, though, and this kind of goes to the depth up front now. Anytime McDavid and Draisaitl get put together on a line, in my opinion, that's a major win for the Jets. I really don't understand why Dave Tippett keeps going to that well against Winnipeg, because it didn't work in the postseason, and it didn't work again against the Jets on Tuesday night. And I don't know if it's maybe a bit of a panic move, but I mean, the Winnipeg Jets are going to win every other matchup if McDavid and Draisaitl are on a line together, right? Like you're putting all your eggs into that basket. And it just sets up the Jets real nicely with their other three lines to take advantage of still some suspect Oilers depth. So, I mean, if you're talking about what I'm looking for in tonight's game, in my opinion, that's a huge positive for the Jets. It's a reason why, and I hate to say this, Pittsburgh was so successful for so many years is because Crosby and Malkin were always on separate lines, because you have to
pick your poison.
Yeah, you have to deal with a world-class player for 45 minutes of the night. But if you only have to do it for 25 minutes a night, hey, they might get a couple of points, but they're probably not get anything else by any of their other forwards. So surprised to see it so quickly in that game on Tuesday night. And yeah, again, if it happens tonight, I might have to put a little moolah on the Jets to make it 6-6.
No doubt. Brandon Rewucki's with us. He is the host of the Skates and Plates podcast. You can follow him on Twitter at Brandon_Rewucki. Hey, just before we go, we focused in a lot on the Jets and, this game on Tuesday. Edmonton has had a great start to the season. I mean, outside of the game and this head-to-head matchup, what have you thought about the Oilers and the way they look this season after their great start, despite a couple uninspiring losses in the past couple of weeks to Buffalo and Detroit? They're beating the good teams.
Yeah. Hey, Detroit's kind of a wagon right now, so maybe we shouldn't throw too much shade at Detroit. But yeah, in my opinion, they're the fastest team in the NHL. And it's not just Connor. I mean, McDavid plays a part in that, obviously, but they play really, really fast. And I think even despite some poor results I don't want to say they're the class of the West, but they're going to be among the 4 contenders by the time the playoffs come around. The Battle of Alberta might be, if we're treated to that, might be an all-time series between those 2 teams. But I kind of liked what the Oilers have done so far. And the emergence of Evan Bouchard has been, I think, one of the key reasons why they've taken this big leap so far. I mean, he's played – Keith and Ceci were brought in to kind of stabilize the Oilers' blue line, but it's been the young guy, Evan Bouchard, who stepped up the most so far. He had a bit of a rough one against the Jets on Tuesday, as did basically the entire team. But yeah, I think the Oilers are going to be just fine the rest of the year. And yeah, not going to be surprised whatsoever if we're talking about Edmonton, Calgary at some point in round 2 of the playoffs.
Well, it's funny you say that, and I don't think it's at all out of the realm of possibility that we could be talking about 3 Western Canadian teams in the Final 4 in the West. I mean, I think the Jets have shown that they're certainly in the mix to be battling in the Central Division, and man, a final for of the Pacific for the Battle of Alberta would be incredible. You can notice I'm omitting one team. That would be the Vancouver Canucks. Wow. Dude, I mean, just thoughts quickly on Vancouver, who lost again last night. They had the Fire Benning chants going on. I didn't think that they were going to be very good, but I did not imagine it falling up completely apart earlier than 20 games into the season.
Oh, no, it's okay. Jim Benning met with the owner, so they figured out what's wrong there. So
insider report, Darren Dreger coming on. The Canucks are preaching patience, and then they lose a game. Let's see the next report up going in. Well, of course, the Jets have been a team that have gotten a lot of coaches fired in the past. Second end, you lose to the Jets on the second end of back-to-backs tomorrow after this Edmonton game tonight. Maybe it'll be an interesting one. But I kind of thought that, even that short term, they'd be better this year. I like Garland coming in. I mean, I know OEL, the contract long term is probably going to be ugly, but you think that he came in, they got rid of so much of that dead weight. They're not seeing any results on that. And in fact, it seems like it's going the other way. And you want to talk about negativity. That market right now is just a cesspool of anger around that hockey club. And I don't know whether it's the coach. It certainly is the general manager and some of the players, but and it's tough to get out of when you're in the swamp like that.
Yeah, my favorite thing is the hot dog meme. When Jim Benning had the meeting with the owner, we're all trying to find the guy who's responsible for this, right? Like, why does the team suck? Why does the coach? Maybe it's the guy that put it all together. And I mean, the simple fact of why they struggled so far is their blue line sucks. It's maybe the worst blue line in the NHL, and that's even with the guy like Quinn Hughes there, right? And Ekman Larsson actually hasn't played all that bad, but there's a couple contract anchors on the blue line still, even though they moved on from the contract anchors that were up front for so many.
Well, they got rid of Nate Schmidt and his $6 million and turned that into 4 years at 2.5 for Pullman and then another 2 or 3 for Travis Hamonic. That was one of the more head-scratching moves of the offseason.
Hey, good for Pullman for getting the bag, but I don't know what you were expecting out of him when Vancouver signed him. I mean, it's pretty clear. Like, it's been over 8 years, I think, right? Like, it's a long time. And the worst thing that happened to the Canucks, honestly, the outlook and the trajectory for the franchise was their, and I think it's fair to say, fluky playoff run in the bubble. That was the worst thing that could have happened because they beat a, wounded / uninterested Blues team. They got dominated by the Golden Knights, but were able to take it to 7 games because Thatcher Demko stood on his head. And so everybody got these insane expectations that, hey, we were 1 game away from a couple finals, right? Like the next step is here. But I think a more pragmatic look at the situation would have been the smarter move. And they've kind of mortgaged the future a decent amount to be a team that at their best is bubble team. Like that's their ceiling right now. Never mind contender. Their ceiling is maybe we can sneak in. So yeah, I was talking with my brother about this. Outside of the Coyotes, I think the Canucks might have the most hopeless fan base right now in the NHL because I don't know how it gets better if Jim Benning meets with ownership and they say, you know what, we need a little bit more time on this one. We need a bit of a longer sample size to figure out what's wrong with this organization.
Yeah, I don't even know if banging out the GM right now, 15 games is going to change anything short term. Hey, Darb Yor popping in with the super chat. Darb Yor, probably our most generous regular. Thanks so much, dude. Great to have you with us, even at this earlier time He says, weekly dime drop time. Can I use $5 of it for a couple pounds of Brandon's hair? Down a few over here. Listen, you're looking good, sounding great. Let people know about Skates and Plates when you're dropping the next episode and where people can find it.
Yeah, it'll be tomorrow, actually. So break down tonight's Oilers-Jets game. Hopefully another W. And yeah, I mean, you can find it on any podcast service. I think people understand how it works.
You figure out how that works, people.
Twitter. Yeah, you'll figure it out. It's out there. It's not too difficult.
Skates and Plates, and hit him up on Twitter. Give him a follow. He'll pump that out there. Rue, let's do this again soon. Thanks for your time as always.
Thanks for having me, man. Have a good one.
Right on. There's Brandon Rewucki, Skates and Plates. New content for you tomorrow morning after tonight's game against the Edmonton Oilers. We're going to check in with the voice of the Moose, Dan Fink, in just a minute. Do want to thank Not Auto Corp for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. If you're thinking about a vehicle now that winter's here, why not get into the car of your dreams at a great price with the help of the Not team? Go down and see them at Waverly and McGillivray, along with the new Winnipeg Car Lab, or find out more on all the services they offer at not.ca, and make sure to follow Winnipeg Car Lab on all the socials as well for all the incredible stuff they're doing in the lab. Of course, our friends at Little Brown Jug, ready for the weekend. Pop by sometime and check out the tap room on William Avenue. Just a great spot to meet friends or gather with a group. They've got a new link right now on the events page if you're looking for a great spot to host a holiday gathering. Little Brown Jug there for you. The new winter variety pack is in all the beer stores, including the limited edition double, which we got a chance to try a couple weeks ago at the tap room. Phenomenal stuff. And of course, littlebrownjug.ca is the spot. Delivery citywide available, and all the incredible spots. By the way, 5th anniversary coming up. We're going to do something special with Little Brown Jug heading into that. And, we were talking a little Olympics earlier. Next Wednesday, I believe, the official drop of the Team Canada Olympic jerseys. And when it comes to Canada gear, Royal Sports is the place to be. We'll hook up with the Royal guys, have those to debut for you on Wednesday. And speaking of Team Canada, I know everyone's so excited about our soccer team after the big win against Mexico. Was looking at the Royal Insta yesterday at Royal Sports Pembina. A bunch of Canada soccer gear going fast right now. So if you do want to pick some of that up, it's the hottest item in town. It's all there, 750 Pembina Highway. Jets, Bombers gear, hockey superstore, snowboarding, everything you need right now is there in one stop over at Royal Sports. All right, let's get to a little Moose talk right now and welcome in the voice of the Manitoba Moose, Daniel Fink, who's joining us live from Canada Life Center as we've got a little morning skate action going on. What is up, Fink? How are you?
Hey, Huss, good to see you. It's, I've got kind of a standard set for the backdrop, so I thought I'd kind of take it to a whole new level here today.
This is awesome.
Yeah, it's we tried this out with the illegal curve guys in Grand Rapids last week. This is a little safer. I've got some netting behind me. There it was a little wide open, so I had to keep checking over my shoulder, but I'm pretty confident. But yeah, I got the Milwaukee Admirals on the ice here behind me right now. Moose already done their morning skate and getting ready for a good game here tonight between these two teams at Canada Life Center.
Before we get to tonight's tilt and the upcoming homestand, give us a little synopsis of a pretty extended road trip that just finished up.
Yeah, I was realizing this morning that the last time we played here was October 31st, so it's been a while. Not as long as the previous break, but yeah, it's been a bit. So out for 6 games through the Central Division, which was pretty cool. We haven't been down there for a couple of years now, so to get to see some of the friendly faces down there and some of our friends with the other organizations, because we do get along off the ice. It was a lot of fun, and to see how some of the crowds are coming back down there and things like that, it was pretty cool. So to get through there for 6 games, the team pretty successful, points in 4 of the 6 games. Could have had a couple of more points along the way as well. Very, very competitive, really did outplay their opposition on a consistent basis. So when you look at this team, a record of 7-5, 1-0 on the season, really could be a little bit better. Goals have dried up. They've run into some hot goaltending at times, but there's a lot of exciting things going on with this team. And we saw them put up 60 shots on goal last week against these very same Milwaukee Admirals. Saw them get by the Grand Rapids Griffins 6-2 in the final game of that 6-game road swing. So when you have a team that can kind of push through some of the adversity and the grueling nature of a long road trip like that, there's some good things going on. So it was a good trip. And now after posting a 3-1 record on their last homestand, they'll look to do something similar here with their 5-game stint coming up.
Yeah, it's a busy weekend for the Moose and Milwaukee. Tonight, tomorrow, and then Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m. with the Admirals in town. Then a couple games next weekend with the Texas Stars. Still a bit of a college schedule, which often happens in the AHL in the first couple months of the season, focusing on weekdays or weekends, which of course is great for people and families that want to come out and see the games. Now, we've spoken a lot on this program about David Gustafsson so far this season, and Ken Wiebe is driving the Gus bus. However, I am taking admissions, and I've got shotgun seat with Weber on it. But to use the bus analogy, it seems like Gustafsson is driving the bus for the Manitoba Moose right now. Tell us about his start to the season and just how good he's been in all aspects of the game, Finker.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to David Gustafsson at the AHL level, he's a pretty special player just because of the way that, he can match up physically against other teams and what he does in the face-off circle on a consistent basis, how he plays up and down the ice. I mean, we keep forgetting how young this guy is. He looks like he's in his 30s the way he's built, but he's still a young kid. And you know what, for him to have so much responsibility with the AHL club, really the last 2 seasons is so valuable. You get into all those situations. He plays power play. He plays penalty kill. He plays 5-on-5. He's out there in the last minute. He does everything for the Manitoba Moose. Not to say he doesn't have some pretty good help riding along with him, but when you see all the stuff that he does, it's hard not to be excited about what the future holds for David Gustafsson. But for the Moose, he was their MVP last year, and he's having another great start to the year.
Yeah, I think he's certainly showing that he's ready for the call when it comes. And when that call comes, I think it might be a one-way ticket down the hall to the Winnipeg Jet dressing room because of what he's done at the American Hockey League level and what I think many of us agree that he'll be able to bring to the Jet lineup. Ville Heinola has had a great season so far. He's just about at a point a game. Fill us in on Ville's season, but I also want to ask you about Johnny Kovacevic, who maybe doesn't get mentioned along with Heinola and Samberg as much as the next guy. But man, anyone paying attention to this team over the last couple of years realizes that he is turning into a pretty significant prospect in his own right, game by game.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget that Johnny Kovacevic was drafted really just 30 spots or so after Dylan Samberg in that same draft. Yeah, he was an older player at the time, but I mean, that's kind of the pedigree that he's coming from. That's what the Winnipeg Jets saw in him when they drafted him. So it's been fun to watch him develop, and he really took off last season. Of course, talking about Kovacevic right now, we'll get to the other guys in a second, but for him, he really took off last season, built throughout that campaign, and by the end of the season was an absolutely dominant defender for the Moose. And it was unfortunate that his season got cut short by just a few games due to injury, but he was able to go home, get rehabbed, come back, and have a strong camp for the Winnipeg Jets. And I think a lot of folks kind of started to know his name a little more when he got into some preseason action, his first preseason action for the Winnipeg Jets. So that was exciting to see. And now back with the Moose. And when I was talking with Dave Minuk and those guys last weekend, we're talking a lot about building blocks, right? You're just trying to build that foundation and then keep stacking those blocks until you're all the way in the NHL. And then you've built yourself a strong enough base that you're not coming back down. You were talking about the one-way ticket. That's always the goal, right? We want to see a guy leave the Manitoba Moose and ideally never come back because he's contributing for the Winnipeg Jets. So it's about building that foundation, and Kovacevic has done a great job with that. So he's been playing with a few different partners, including Ville Heinola, and it's been cool to see Kovacevic add a little bit more of an offensive side to his game. Definitely excels in his own end, but when you can add that extra dimension to your game, it just makes you that much more valuable. And for Ville Heinola, I mean, everybody knows what he can do. He's so smart on the ice. He can move the puck well. So he's definitely been important for the Moose power play. He's been important in racking up points along the way. He's tied with David Gustafsson for the team lead in points. And in November, he's been really pushing the pace offensively. So that's been great to see. Obviously, there's still things to work on for Ville Heinola, and that's why he's in the American Hockey League and why it's such a great opportunity for him to marinate and get better and learn from any mistakes that he does make, because they happen with young players. And this Moose coaching staff, which has worked with a lot of good defenders over the years and has built players up. I mean, the track record speaks for itself when you talk about a Logan Stanley, Jansen Harkins, Kyle Connor, guys like that who have been built up and now are key contributors for the Winnipeg Jets. So it's an opportunity for some of these younger guys. Of course, we'll see Samberg here tonight at Canada Life Center getting into his first action of the season. And with so many Jets prospects and draft picks on the blue line, 7 in fact, we'll see 5 of them in the lineup here tonight. So it's a lot of fun to watch that defensive group play, and it's a great opportunity for fans to get a good eye on the future.
Well, and Dan, I mean, we always focus in on, the top draft picks, the guys that we're expecting to be next called up to the Winnipeg Jets. But I mean, you're calling all these games, you're around the team all the time. I was really impressed with Esimont and Podnanski coming in the preseason so far. And from what I've seen, for folks that maybe they're coming to a game this weekend and they haven't seen the Moose yet, we've talked about the usual suspects, Heinola and Gustafsson. Is there a player or two that maybe was a little more off the radar coming into the season that sort of stood out to you that people should take note of when they get to the rink?
You know me, Huss, this is always my favorite part where I get to extol the virtues of all the guys that maybe don't get the press that they deserve. And there's definitely a lot of them. This Moose lineup is so deep, and really no matter who they put out on the ice, there's somebody that can contribute. And I mean, you think of guys like Jeff Malott, who did sign with the Winnipeg Jets this offseason, led the Moose in goals last season, had a bit of a slow start, just couldn't get the bounces to go. He had chance after chance, finally broke through on the road trip, and all of a sudden he's got 3 goals in his last 4 games. Had a beautiful setup for Greg Morellis, who is a guy that I'm guessing it might be a very unfamiliar name to a lot of folks, but he was an offseason signing by the Moose, real young kid, comes in, and he's got 6 points already for the Moose. So he's been contributing, playing on the fourth line, getting time in on the penalty kill, getting time in on the power play, and making the most of his opportunities. And if you've been paying attention to this team for the last few years, you'll know the name Cole Meyer. He's got 7 points already on the season, playing alongside Nicholas Jones and whoever the Moose decide that night needs maybe a little boost to play alongside those guys, because they're so consistent, they're so good at either end of the ice. But Meyer's been able to find a little bit more of that offensive touch. So as good a shutdown group as Meyer and Jones, who've really been attached at the hip since Jones came to the team last season, now they're finding a little bit more offense. So, and they're a key part of the penalty kill. The Moose ranked 3rd in the league in PK so far this season. They were sitting at the top of the mountain until last night when Cleveland and Syracuse both played each other and didn't give up any power play goals. So they've got a great penalty kill that's only given up 1 goal in the last 6 games. Those guys are a big part of it. So up and down this lineup, you mentioned Esimont Podnanski. You'll find guys that maybe aren't those top prospects that are the household name, but man, do they contribute when you consider Esimont leads the team in goals, even though he missed some time due to injury. Podnanski playing with Gustafsson and Perfetti. Haven't even talked about Cole Perfetti yet. So there's a lot of options for Mark Morrison and his assistant coaches to use on a nightly basis. And man, when this team gets its pedal down like they did in Milwaukee and put up 60 shots, it's just relentless, and man, is it fun to watch.
Yeah. Hey, well, speaking of Perfetti, how's he doing and who's he playing with right now?
So yeah, I mentioned he's sitting on a wing right now, actually, with David Gustafsson and Austin Podnanski. So getting a little time off the wing give the Moose a bit of a different look and gives Perfetti a little more room to work, especially when you have guys like the Bus and Podnanski who can go get the puck and create some space. For Perfetti's been a bit of snake bitten lately. He's actually hit, I think it's 4 posts in the last 5 games. He's been beating goalies clean, just can't beat the iron back there. So those are going to start to fall for him soon. But he's Cole Perfetti. I mean, there's a lot of skill there, a lot of talent, and I think it's a bit of an adjustment again. I mean, he had to adjust to the pro game last season. A bit of adjustment again as the quality of the AHL has jumped up that much more this season from having the taxi squads all returned. So there's some tough, big teams out there in the Central Division. So it's a great learning experience for Perfetti to kind of continue to build his game against those bigger, stronger, faster pros. And if it takes off anything like it did towards the end of last season, then he'll be a treat to watch once again with the Moose. I mean, he already is, but it can be that much more fun when those pucks start to going in.
Daniel Fink is the voice of the Manitoba Moose. You can hear all the games at cjob.com. And of course, all your Moose information is there for you at moosehockey.com. Dan, we're going to have to get Mark Morrison on the show at some point soon to talk about the season, but you're around. I mean, Pascal's been running the show for the last number of years. He gets his opportunity in the National Hockey League. Tell us about the new coach. How's he been on and off the ice? And going into this homestand, what will the coach be looking for, as he hopes to see his team continue to improve? Is there an area or whatnot that the Moose are sort of really focusing in on?
I think they're going to be trying to get to the front of the net a little bit more. They've outshot their opposition in all but one of their 13 games this season. So I think they'll be trying to push to the front of the net, box out a little better in front of their own. They have been guilty at times of really pushing the pace at one end of the ice and then maybe forgetting that they have to take care of their own end at times too, because we see maybe them give up 16 shots in the game, but 8 of those are really good looks. So it's about cleaning up some of that stuff. And I think overall, Mark Morrison's been pretty happy with what he's seen from his team. He preaches a lot about pace. We need to play with pace. That's the important thing coming from the American Hockey League to the NHL, because he was an assistant coach with the Anaheim Ducks the last 4 seasons before coming back to the Moose. And that's what he noted, is that guys coming up from the American Hockey League, they need to adjust to that pace. So we want our guys to always be pushing it, so they're more ready when they go to the next level. And that also helps with your own game at the American League level. And looking at just his style, things like that, he's a pretty laid back guy. But the thing that hasn't changed from Mark Morrison, Pascal Vincent, is just how much they care about their players, how much time they spend talking to guys and developing those relationships. And for both those men, that's what they really found rewarding about this position and working in the American Hockey League and helping develop prospects. And I mean, you'll see Mark Morrison out there with the scratches skating, things like that, which sometimes you don't always see your head coach doing on a game day or something like that. He'll let the assistant coaches handle their meetings and things like that. If it's a non-skate day, he might go out with the scratches and things like that. So he's a guy who's very invested in his players, and he's just great to work with.
Well, and speaking of big-time performances, I do have to say before we finish up, Dan. Oh, by the way, Alex is asking in the chat about this homestand. It's a 5-game homestand tonight and tomorrow and Sunday afternoon against Milwaukee, a week of practice, and then next Saturday and Sunday at home, both matinees, 2 o'clock against the Texas Stars. We are spoiled here in Winnipeg right now. We've got one of the best in the biz, Paul Edmonds, calling the Winnipeg Jets for CJOB. We've got Munsey doing the ice. And you, my friend, are doing such a great job calling the Moose game. And we played that the OT winner by Gavanka from the 61 shot game a few times. But it's quite obviously you're having a lot of fun. But if we're talking about great prospects in the game coming out of the Moose, I will put your name at the top of the list. We're lucky to have you right now. We're very lucky to have you on this program, man. Thanks so much for doing this.
No problem. Okay, so if you got a second, I got a funny story about that.
Fire away.
So I finished the goal call. I didn't have a lot of air in the system right at the end, talking too much. Pushed maybe a little too hard from it. All of a sudden, the building in Milwaukee starts doing somersaults. Have to put my head down between my knees as Derek Meach is finishing off and find my chair. Meanwhile, this is going on. I can't hear anything. I got this headset on, and Brad Andrews and Mike Keane are sitting down a little far. They just burst out laughing. I don't know if they're laughing at me or whatever. I get my headset off when we finally go to break. What is so funny? They look at me and say, some guy down at the front, like down by ice level, after the OT winner, spins around, and after it's finished screaming my lungs out, screams, "Nobody's listening!" back at me from the stands, at which point I realized in a building that it gets pretty quiet when the road team scores an overtime goal. You could hear me throughout the entire place, so I had a pretty good laugh at that afterwards. But yeah, it's it's so much fun to be kind of back to normal a little bit, be out on the road, and I love calling the games, and I appreciate the kind words, Hustler. It's a pleasure to bring them to everybody, and but that all said, I'd rather you were back here in the bowl here tonight, fans. Again, Huss mentioned it, but we're going to be here next 2 nights, 7 o'clock, moosehockey.com/tickets to get yours. 2 o'clock on Sunday, which is also the Hockey Fights Cancer game. We'll have a specialty jersey on the ice. New look. Haven't done the lavender before, so that'll be pretty cool. And, of course, the next 2 games against the Texas Stars the next weekend. It's been a lot of fun to be back in front of fans. That's been the big thing about this season for me. It's a little bit emotional at times seeing everybody back in the building, so we'd love to have you here tonight. And, again, this team's a lot of fun to watch, and you don't want to miss those opportunities to see them.
No, there's no doubt. This is the best Moose team we've seen since they returned to Winnipeg. A lot of great Jet prospects, a lot of great professionals, and should be some great hockey. Keep bringing it, my man. Now let's do this next week before the series against Texas.
Sounds good, Huss. Thanks a lot.
There it is. At Daniel the Fink on Twitter, moosehockey.com, and of course, cjob.com for the broadcasts of all the Manitoba Moose games. Get out and check out this team. They're a wagon this year. All right, we're going to get back to Jets and Oilers. Do want to shout out our friends at Princess Auto. I'm so fired up. Going to be heading out to Saskatoon on the weekend for the Tim Hortons Olympic curling trials. We'll do some special Princess Auto curling reports as 5 Manitoba teams are in the mix to represent Canada at the Beijing Games. Of course, Princess Auto, proud sponsors of Jennifer Jones' squad, as well as Mike McEwen's squad. And I'll tell you what, they're also the spot where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. You can check them out at one of 2 Winnipeg locations. Of course, their head office nationwide is here as well. Family owned, and you can also shop online or get those ideas spinning in your head 24/7, 365 over at princessauto.com. We do have a busy night tonight in the National Hockey League. Let's quickly check the Boston Pizza scoreboard for tonight. Preds and Sens is postponed due to the COVID outbreak. You got the Flames and Sabres, Rangers, Leafs, Pens, Habs, Devils, Panthers, Lightning and Flyers, Sharks and Blues, big Central Division matchup between the Stars and the Wild, Blue Jackets, Coyotes, Red Wings, Golden Knights, Hurricanes, Ducks, and of course, 8 o'clock Winnipeg time, the Winnipeg Jets and the Edmonton Oilers. We got a Thursday night football game as well. No better place to get together with the gang than at your local Boston Pizza for those ice cold schooners, Boston's wings, great pizza, and the big game on with the big sound. And if you're staying home, order online at bostonpizza.com or give a call to your local BP. I got to give a shout out to Nick and the Nick and Nikki DQ group. Was talking to Nick yesterday. I am very excited to try this new steakhouse burger. He was telling me, extolling all the virtues of this new burger. And I've always said DQ in the fast food game, the most underrated burgers around. I'm a huge fan of the Ultimate Grill Burger, but this steakhouse burger looks amazing. So pop down to one of the 4 Nick and Nikki DQs and try them out. You've got the DQ in Niverville. Nick's working lunches this week, by the way, helping out at one of the stores. So if you're out in Niverville, pop in, maybe go through the drive-thru and say, what's up to Nick from a WST listener. They've also got the DQ on Northgate, the DQ at Polo Park, and the DQ St. Anne's, which is now open year-round, much to the delight of everybody in St. Vital. And they're also doing all those blizzards, great burgers, and everything out on the delivery apps from St. Anne's with Skip the Dishes and DoorDash. Hit them up on Insta at DQ Manitoba if you want to get a cake ordered, customized, ready for you to pick up at any of the 4 Nick and Nikki DQ locations. All right, let's get back to this Jets-Oilers series and the rematch tonight. And we welcome in Invisalign spokesman Tom Gazzola, fresh from getting the grill taken care of. What's up, Tommy? How are you?
Oh, I'm just grinning ear to ear, Huss. Just feels great. Everything's nice and clean, much better than I can do. So yeah, Invisalign. Sure, I'll do a little pitch for them if I need to. Thank you for that.
No doubt about it. Great to have you on the program. You know, I was on with Dusty and Eric this morning, and, you know, of course, often now that we don't have a station here, we'll listen to what the guys are doing in the morning. Yesterday, let's just say the focus was on Canada's big win at Commonwealth Stadium, because I'm not sure that many Oiler fans wanted to talk too much about the game on Tuesday night. We'll maybe get a comment on the soccer in a minute, but just your thoughts on that game between the Jets and Oilers on Tuesday night and the way that it went, especially considering the background of an unexpected 4-game sweep in the playoffs.
Yeah, not a lot of people wanted to talk about the Oilers game on the post-game show either. So myself and Hernan Salas and Matty Cassian were like, well, I guess we'll talk a little bit of soccer. Listen, this is turning into a great rivalry between the Jets and the Oilers. And I know people in Winnipeg love it, especially now with the Jets doing what they did to Edmonton in the postseason last year. Well done. And then, of course, the Oilers, they had success against Winnipeg last year in the regular season, all those wins in a row. And everybody here is thinking, all right, the Oilers are finally going to wake up, play well in the postseason, maybe win a round or 2. And the Jets stopped that, snuffed it out pretty well. And then so we're thinking going into the game the other night on Tuesday, like, could the Oilers maybe use some of what happened last year in the postseason in May as motivation? And Winnipeg just came out, took the early lead on that Lowry goal. Like, listen, Mikko Koskinen, you got to have that. That's not an NHL caliber goal. No offense to the Jets and their faithful, but that's not good. Koskinen's been gifting those. So that put the Oilers behind the 8 ball. And on that road trip, they were really, really spotty defensively. Us, their 5-on-5 play has been a big issue. And when they want to turn it on against good teams, they can. They didn't do that the other night. And if they don't do it tonight, I think the Jets could smack them and take 2 in a row from them. So the Oilers need to sharpen up big time defensively, neutral zone, and goaltending. You know what? The average has been good for Koskinen, who won't be playing tonight. Looks like it's Stuart Skinner. But, man, when you're down a goal early in 6 straight and for the majority of this month, you get tired of it. And that's a tough hill to climb night after night after night after night.
You know, that goal was amateur hour. There's no doubt about it. I mean, that one can't go in. Although I will say this. I mean, when we got to the intermission, we're talking to people. I mean, that could have easily been 2 or 3-0 in the first period. I mean, I'm not sure they were brilliant saves, or maybe the Jets just not making the most of some pretty darn good point blank opportunities that were there. But the Oilers were still absolutely in that game. And I think what was maybe surprising to many of us in the building that were sort of expecting, okay, when is this push coming from Draisaitl and McDavid and guys that we've seen tearing up the league all season? It was the Jets in the third period that really sort of, raised their game even more. And, obviously 4-0 after the second period. But this is the thing about the Edmonton Oilers, and everyone here knows it. These games can change quickly. Everybody saw what happened to the New York Rangers a couple of weeks ago when Draisaitl said, "Don't worry, it's coming." And it sort of felt like it was coming early in the third period when there were some unfortunate penalties on the Winnipeg side of things. This game flipped. It's a 2-goal game with 16 and a half minutes left. But at that point, and certainly from a Winnipeg side of things, Paul Maurice talked about it, and maybe the thing that he was the most happy was the way the Jets played after the Oilers getting back into the game. And what I don't think anyone could have imagined was a frustrated Connor McDavid taking a penalty late in the game because of Neil Pionk. Let me ask you about Pionk, because I've heard a number of people in the Edmonton market saying it's crazy, but the one defenseman in the National Hockey League that seems to give McDavid more of a problem than anyone is Neil Pionk. Do you subscribe to that, and why is that?
Absolutely, I do. For whatever reason, and I like Neil Pionk. Like, this is a good defenseman. He has offensive capabilities. We've seen that. He scored some nice goals, and he's all right defensively too. I look at Pionk and I'm like, where did this kind of like pest come from? And he is a guy that I don't think it's just McDavid Huss. I think he gets under the skin of the team in general. And obviously, if you get under McDavid's skin, the other guys are going to jump in. But I remember a game last season where Leon Draisaitl basically went from one corner to the other just to take a shot at Neil Pionk. And I'm like, why are you doing that? I thought the beef with Pionk and McDavid was the only one that was there. But this is a guy that's found a way to get under their skin. We saw McDavid take that penalty on him. Listen, Pionk did a good job of getting in there, came back after, taking one in the chops and was laughing about it. And then you see the scrum that ensues. He played it to a T. He's been playing it to a T. The only other guy that I think that annoys the Oilers and Oiler fans as much, maybe a little bit more, is Matthew Tkachuk. And that's pretty high praise for Neil Pionk. So, maybe the Oilers try to do it in a legal way tonight. Maybe they try to get physical with Pionk just to say, hey, enough is enough. But that's just an idea, maybe a slight recommendation. However, this team doesn't really assert itself physically. That's another thing that the Jets did really well. They took the body on the Oilers, and the Oilers didn't have much of a response physically. So that needs to be something that gets stepped up. But Neil Pionk has done a fantastic job, Huss. Honestly, he annoys the Oilers more than anybody else in the league, save for Matthew Tkachuk. And if you can get these guys off their game, get them thinking about a defenseman rather than trying to light up the Jets, listen, Hellebuck's a hell of a goalie too. So that's tough to do in the first place. Kudos. Like, honestly, kudos to Neil Pionk.
Yeah, well, and the one thing that's so different from last year to this year, for the majority of last year, Neil Pionk was playing with Derek Forbort, who had, a good first half of the season. I think really sort of came back to the mean, if you will, in the second half. He's now got 6'4", 6'5" Brendan Dillon as his defense partner. And I think everybody plays a few inches taller when you have a guy like that. Let me ask you just about your opinion of the Jets on seeing this, especially on that blue line, how different the Jets defense looks now with Nate Schmidt alongside Josh Morrissey, who frankly looks like a different player last year, and now Neil Pionk with some serious beef on his side in that top four in Brendan Dillon.
When they made those moves, Huss, in the offseason, I'm like, this team is going to be one that needs to be reckoned with, because it's I'm sure there's holes and deficiencies on this team, but from an outsider's take, covering the Oilers and then seeing the Jets every time they come to town or the Oilers go there, I'm looking at the Jets, especially this summer. I'm like, that looks like a pretty complete roster. I love the first two lines. I still have a lot of time for Paul Stastny. I know he was banged up, didn't make the trip and didn't play in that last game, but I still think he has something to give. The top two lines that the Jets have, I think, are fantastic as well. Like, there's depth everywhere on this team. And then you got the backbone in Hellebuck. Like, I'm looking at them going, boy, like, watch out for this club. And that was something that we talked about going into the postseason was, can you expose the Jets' blue line? The Oilers clearly couldn't. Edmonton's lack of offensive depth was something that showed. And so we got some answers there. But now they add guys like Dillon, veteran guys like Schmidt, veteran guys that have been around. They've had success and can hold their own. It just bolsters this lineup. I like the Jets lineup, and I'm not trying to pander to your crowd and your audience. It's a good team that they have over there, and that's why I think the Oilers have to be on their A game tonight. And anything less, we're talking about Winnipeg taking away 2 points out of Edmonton.
Well, we'll get to a couple of the issues with the Oilers in a minute, but I will say sort of what you've said about the Jet blue line. I sort of feel the same way about the Edmonton forward unit. I mean, this team, as close as that series was completely relying on McDavid and Draisaitl. And when those guys weren't able to score, I mean, it was the Jets game. I mean, and you saw with Tippett, I mean, I can't remember. We had some fun talking about the ice time numbers between Edmonton and Winnipeg in those overtime games and just how heavy it was. But I mean, you add in a player like Zach Hyman. Warren Foegele, I think, is a guy that not a lot of people talk about, but has been a real nice add to that middle six. From your perspective, I mean, how much of a better place are the Oilers in 1-12 for their forward group as opposed to the one that we saw bow out last spring?
Yeah, you could legitimately say they have three lines that can hurt you. Unfortunately, this is what's happening, Huss, is they're coughing up tons of goals 5-on-5, regardless of what line's out there. So they've addressed a couple of needs. Obviously, the depth was one. And then at the same time, with the way that Hyman plays, with the way that Foegele plays, it was a sneaky good pickup. It wasn't a popular trade, sending Ethan Bear the other way. That's a defenseman that Oilers fans really took to. But you got to give up something to get something. And that's something that some people around here didn't necessarily like or want to admit and thought the cost was too high. But Warren Foegele is a guy that plays in the tough areas of the ice. He's a bigger body. He has elements of being physical. We didn't see it the other night. And so too does Zach Hyman. Zach Hyman's not as tall, maybe not as big as Warren Foegele, but he goes to the gritty areas, scores ugly goals, Huss. And one thing the Oilers haven't done in years prior is pay the price to score goals. And it was passing pucks into the net, making the pretty plays. And if they couldn't do that, you weren't getting anything from the third and fourth lines. They were basically a black hole on the roster. Now you have these guys who are capable of doing that. Foegele on the third line. Hyman's been up and down between the first two lines. The added depth there is good. The style of play is important because, again, they didn't have that. Now, the problem is, back in their own zone, Huss, they're leaking goals like crazy. Some of them are on the goalie. Some of them are on Koskinen, yes, and Stuart Skinner to a lesser extent. But a lot of it is on the defensive zone play. Sloppy from day one of the season. Very sloppy. Lots of mistakes. Lazy plays up the wall. Doesn't matter what line's out there. They've been making those plays, and it's cost them for the first month of the season. And then through the neutral zone, too, where you're seeing passes getting picked off when guys should be. Duncan Keith has had a ton of neutral zone outlet passes picked off us where they've come back the other way and been goals. So that's the issue. But yes, the depth is there. The scoring is obviously there, but you got to keep pucks out of your own net. And as a whole, the team's just not doing it very well at all.
Well, speaking, Tom Gazzola, by the way, is with us. Give him a follow on Twitter at Tom Gazzola. You can check him out along with Hernan Salas doing pre and post game coverage for TSN 1260. And of course, filling in very admirably for Dusty when he's gallivanting around the country calling CFL games. Keeping the puck out of the net. I mean, the last line of defense, and that, honestly, I think was the difference between these two teams in the playoffs. The Winnipeg Jets had Connor Hellebuck and the Edmonton Oilers didn't. And when you're going down to a game, an incredibly thin difference between winning and losing, often it's one big save that keeps you in a game that allows you to win. I know there was a ton of talk around Edmonton about the fact that they didn't change the goaltending going into this season. Mike Smith came back. Mikko Koskinen was still signed. And now Smith is out early on in the season. And to be honest, the results for Koskinen early on were quite good. I mean, he did have some relatively good numbers. And when he didn't have a strong game, the Oilers were able to outscore their opposition. Are they going to be able to continue to do that? And, when you're talking to Oiler fans, how hot of a topic is goaltending? And do you think Ken Holland's already thinking about potentially making some move, not waiting till the deadline to add somebody, but maybe trying to get someone here sooner as opposed to later, especially with Mike Smith at the age that he's at, with some questions as to how many games he can play and how healthy he'll be for the season and the playoffs?
Those are totally valid questions too. And clearly 2 years in a row, he's gotten hurt early in the season, and the team has had to rely on Mikko Koskinen. It is a hot button issue. We're hearing it on the post-game show, the morning show, whatever show. Like, people are talking about it, and they're downright angry. Listen, I think Kenny Holland's open for business, has been basically since the end of last season, and just has to find the right move, the right guy at the right price. Obviously, the salary cap's an issue. Mikko Koskinen, Huss, when he was gifted that beautiful contract from Peter Chiarelli.
It's like when you leave, the price is right. Thank you. We have some beautiful parting gifts. Here's a 3-year contract at $4.5 million a season.
Yeah, after playing like 30 NHL games over the course of his career, and that was right before Peter Chiarelli was fired. Add to that, it has a limited no movement clause in there. Like, that's the icing on the cake.
Well,
when it
good
comes
luck
to
trading that contract, anyways. But
so yeah, and then that's what Holland's trying to deal with. Would he like to get rid of Koskinen? Yeah, but here he is with Mikko Koskinen. I'm sure he's poking and prying, making calls, because that's what Ken Holland does. Every time a guy becomes available, it seems like the Oilers, we hear, are interested, or you hear the insiders talk about them. I think that's just Ken Holland calling everybody, because that's what he does. He's just like a hockey geek, wants to know the story about everybody that's in the National Hockey League. So that's good. But with Koskinen, they're stuck with him right now. Stuart Skinner, again, is the kind of up-and-coming goaltender. Mikko Koskinen, in the last 6 starts since November 1st, Huss, he's allowed the first shot of the game to go in once. That was the other night in Winnipeg. Twice has allowed the second shot of the game to go in. One time, the third shot of the game goes in. Another time, the fourth shot of the game goes in. And then the outlier, believe it or not, was against St. Louis, where he allowed the 10th shot of the game to go in. So early goals are a major issue. And this was something that happened with him last year too. He hasn't been able to shake it. The guy's 33 years old. I don't think you're teaching an old dog like that new tricks. And these aren't great goals. The Lowry goal the other night, perfect example. Like, just us, like,
that was ugly.
Yeah, and those are the types of goals that are going in. The only one that I could think of this month that on the second shot of the game that was legit was Hedl in that crazy New York game. You're like, all right, I'm not going to blame that one on Mikko Koskinen. But the other ones, just like, come on, dude, you need to be there for your team. And then it's compounded by the sloppiness too.
Do you think Ken Holland would have his first round pick next year on the table for goaltending help right now, considering, you sort of have a window. There's only so many years you have with McDavid and Draisaitl playing at this level. And man, it really would be a shame, just as a hockey fan in me, to see a team with so much potential. It is so fun to watch, not being able to get to close to their potential because they have a serious issue at arguably the most important position in the game.
I think the first rounder would be on the table. Obviously, it'd have to be, the right return. But absolutely, I think the realization that now is the time is acknowledged by everybody in this city. Everybody, top brass at the Oilers, the team, coaching staff, media, obviously, and the fans. They've been sick of the losing. Now they can see that this team has a nucleus that is something that potentially could be special. They're seeing these unbelievable performances from their top 2 guys in Draisaitl and McDavid. So yeah, like, you got to strike when the iron's hot. And it just depends what's out there, Huss. Like, can you pluck Marc-Andre Fleury out of Chicago? Now all of a sudden they're winning games after getting rid of Colleton. A lot of people around here really like John Gibson, and they still bring up his name. But Anaheim's off to an excellent start. So are those guys available? Probably not. The prospects aren't particularly great, but we've got a lot of hockey left. So something could shake loose by then. But I think, again, Ken Holland's probably open for business, because to expect a third straight season where the goaltending's a pleasant surprise in Koskinen and Smith, now, sprinkle in Stuart Skinner, I think that's too much of a gamble. And we're already starting to see it we've seen them bend, and now they're starting to break a little bit where these deficits are starting to cost them points.
What's the word on Smith? I mean, how optimistically, when would he be back?
Okay, so I was talking to some people last night. He hasn't even been skating. They're taking it slow with this lower body injury. They're saying it's a leg. And so, obviously the healing process has not gone to plan. He was on the trip, left after like 2 or 3 days, back to Edmonton to get treatment. He's not even skating right now. So it could still be at least another week, could be a couple more weeks. And now that's really going to test the mettle of Koskinen and now Stuart Skinner. Skinner's looked good, has not gotten the run support in the starts that he's had this year, cost himself points and a potential victory in Detroit last week when he had a terrible blub to Dylan Larkin. And it was a bad gaffe, obviously, but he's been solid. And you know what? He makes the first stop. It's sad that we're even talking about it, Huss, at this point, but like shot 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 generally gets stopped by Stuart Skinner. Generally.
Tommy Gazzola with us here, getting ready for the rematch tonight. A great rivalry coming to fruition between the Winnipeg Jets and the Edmonton Oilers. 8:00 start here in Winnipeg, 7:00 start out in Edmonton. Hey, Tom, just before we go, and I know you actually ended up doing a de facto World Cup qualifier post-game show on Tuesday. You were working. Did you get to the game on Friday? And just as an Edmonton guy, give us a little idea about how exciting that was for the city to have those games played there, the incredible turnout from Edmonton fans and Canadian soccer fans coming from all around. And of course, to have their own Alphonso Davies be such a big part of a historic win for Canada.
Yeah, Huss, there's a lot of good elements that came together, right place, right time type of thing. Unfortunately, I was not at either game because there was an Oilers game night, both of those, so I had to be on the air. But, 45,000 the other day in -10 with snow. Like there was a snowstorm. You guys know snowstorms very well.
That storm was no joke. I mean, Dusty in the morning was describing it like the planet Hoth. I mean, 20 centimeters of snow. It doesn't matter if you're in Winnipeg or Edmonton. That's a significant dump.
And people showed up, and it was excellent. And Alphonso Davies, this is a fantastic story. This is a kid that was a refugee, came to Edmonton, lived in a couple of rough neighborhoods, but got his started with the soccer program, grassroots. And obviously had the talent, the desire, the want, and he got to the Whitecaps, and then we saw him at MLS. We're seeing him at Bayern Munich now, and all of that came together. This team is fantastic. Obviously, we're fortunate we have a great stadium here where we can host these type of events, and people bought in. And I think, it's funny, I say this jokingly, but it was nice to see a winning team, a winning home team at Commonwealth Stadium this year.
What an ugly year for the Elks. I mean, geez, I didn't see that coming, to be honest, that it was bad. Maybe we should have known that when they only give up 90 yards of offense and lose on a pick 6 in game 1, that was a bit of an omen for a rough season. But I don't think anyone could have imagined it going as bad as it's been this year.
Terrible. And they won that night, the night we had the Jets Oilers game and the Canada-Mexico game. So,
the Argo game that nobody watched at all, including in Toronto.
Exactly. But just to finish up on Canada, it was the Women's World Cup, or in 2002, I think it was, U23, or it was one of those where Christine Sinclair was just getting on the scene, and they had like 35,000 in the stands at Commonwealth for those games. And I think that's where this infatuation and love of Canada's soccer.
Well, Tom,
program.
to be honest with you, I mean, I can tell you, I worked with the Oilers about 20 years ago. I had Steven Sandor on the program, who I worked with at the time there. He's really turned into one of the preeminent soccer journalists in town out of Edmonton. And we went to a game at Commonwealth, an international friendly between Canada and Trinidad and Tobago. And I mean, I was a very casual fan at the time, but Dwight York, who was playing, I believe, for Man United, was in the game. And I mean, I was sort of new in the city. I went there just because, I'm into sports. I'll go to pretty much anything. But I mean, there was 30,000 people for that. And I got a chance to kind of learn about I mean, Edmonton has been a city that has supported soccer, Canadian soccer, with actual people cheering for Canada, which didn't happen in a lot of the other markets. It was always visiting fans. So there is that legacy. And then you think about the Women's World Cup, and now, of course, the shared World Cup between Canada and the United States for, I believe, 2026.
Yep.
Edmonton showed out big time that they should be at the top of the list for those international events because the people stepped up. You need to have that sort of fan support. And to think about the conditions for both games and the turnout and the atmosphere, and you heard it from John Herdman and every one of the players. I mean, this was a very, very special. We'll always remember the hashtag Iceteka and remember those games. And I'll tell you what, for people, and I mean, there's lots of room on the bandwagon. If you have ever been someone that's been even casually interested in international soccer, but not really because Canada stunk for so long, it seems like that time is over. And man, is it exciting for people that are following Canada's men's national team. It's not just the women winning all the gold and doing all the heavy lifting.
And you know what's funny too? I'm glad you point that out. That was around what? When Canada won the Gold Cup around 2000 or so.
Yeah.
So they kind of had a little resurgence. And then there was a friendly here in like 94 where Brazil came to town and they sold out Commonwealth. And I don't think our Canadian men at that point was a particularly formidable squad or anything like that.
I can assure you they weren't.
Yeah. And, you know, people here do embrace soccer and there's a ton of space at that stadium. It's just nice to see the passion reignited. And you know what? They're talking now about 2026 hosting games here. I'm sure if they get that done, Edmonton would happily host games here. A lot of refurbishments would go to that stadium, which has been maintained pretty well. And the other thing too, Huss, is they're talking about getting rid of the turf, which would be fantastic to see natural grass back at Commonwealth. Really, it would be, even if it was just temporary.
Yeah, and I think they'd certainly have to do that if they wanted to be a host for World Cup games. Tommy, thanks for doing this. I know it's a busy day for you. If the Jets win tonight, make sure to just open up the phones for about 90 minutes. We'll all be tuning in.
I love it, Huss. Thanks for having me on, man. Enjoy the game.
Right on. Let's do this again soon. There's Tom Gazzola in Edmonton doing pre and post for TSN 1260 and a regular contributor to the Nielsen Show. And of course, Dusty and Tom also do the Oil stream. So for you Oiler fans, make sure to check that out on your podcast platforms. Dusty, the king of content, cranking out much more. And speaking of content cranked out by Dusty, he and I will be doing another edition of the Lock Shop for week 10 in the National Football League, or I guess no, week 11 now, coming up tomorrow morning on all your podcast feeds, as well as streaming live on Dusty's Twitter account. Great stuff with Tommy. Thanks to him for coming on the program. Hey, I do, tomorrow is Friday, and you know what that means, gang? Another marble race with some great prizes with our great sponsor and official whiskey Canadian Club. We've got the co-branded Winnipeg Sports Talk Canadian Club hoodies to give away. Rob Mahoney has one of his associates popping by to pick up his I Love Rye package. We'll have another one of those as well to give away with the Doc 57, that special Manitoba Saskatchewan only blend. Give that out. I know we got one for Rob today as well. But right now in our local liquor stores, if you can find it, the CC Chronicles Canadian Club 44-year-old whiskey sixes is something else. 44 years in the making, a tribute to a time when bootleggers would smuggle Canadian Club across the frozen Detroit River in 6-cylinder roadsters. You can find that out. There was less than 70 bottles in the province of Manitoba. They debuted last week, so if you do have somebody that is a real lover of rye, this is a very special bottle available at local Manitoba liquor marts. And of course, the great taste of CC will be available and probably a lot being poured December 5th for the big Western final between the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the winner of the Riders and the Calgary Stampeders. We'll get to the Coolbet lines in a minute. Let's get Michael Remis back in here. And Remo, speaking of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, we do have a couple of practice updates from one Ed Tate. And Zach Caleros is back, the new father, running with the ones today. But interestingly enough, Sean McGuire out but not throwing. And third stringer Drew Brown getting some work at QB as well.
Yes, that's exactly Ed tweeting. So we'll wait and see. Seems like Collaros will get some reps. Who knows how long? But maybe they weren't impressed with Sean McGuire. We don't know if he's hurt. We'll wait and hear. But it's pretty clear. Zach Collaros, he's the guy. He's gonna have baby swag. It's his second child. I think baby swag doubled. You know, it exponentially grows the more you have, right? That's why Phil Rivers had all of his power.
His entire career was just one endless swing of baby swag, because as soon as it ended, he cranked out another kid with his wife.
Exactly. So, we just hope everyone's healthy. I see a lot of people tweeting about the 2007 Bombers, Huss. And we all know it was you who jinxed them when you went to buy tickets to the Grey Cup, and then you came back downstairs and saw Kevin Clemens
getting carted off, and the Argos kicking an extra point.
Yeah, so we're kind of just like crossing our fingers. I know the Bombers play this weekend against Calgary. It's a glorified exhibition game, right? To be fair to say, they're just trying to get out healthy, get your reps in. They are favored by 4. But we'll see. But Calgary, I'm kind of getting spooked from Calgary. Reggie Bagleton had a big game. I don't think Bo Levi is the same guy from the past couple of years, but he does have that history of being a great player in the CFL. So we could have, there could be the December 5th rematch. We'll wait and see.
Well, you know what? I mean, the one thing about Calgary, as talented as they are, they don't have a good record of playing in the cold. And, as much as on an even field, if they were playing at BC Place, I think I would take Calgary over Saskatchewan. But I do think the Riders are going to be ready for Calgary. And the 3 games that they played just last month or whatever, all of them were incredibly close. But Calgary sort of got off the mat with the first 2 wins in that series and really got themselves back in on the road to overtaking the BC Lions, who completely cratered out after getting pumped by the Bombers at home. And they were never the same team after that. Nathan Rourke's getting the final start. So here's the question for you, Remis, and you know where I'm going with this. Does Zach Collaros stay in the game long enough to get 172 yards and lead the league in passing this season?
Oh, how many yards does he need?
172. Riley has 171 and is not starting. Of course, Collaros sat out last game. I don't think it's 50%. I think I've got about a 40% chance of Collaros getting in long enough. Hopefully a couple big ones early in the game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be close. He might fall just short. They'll have to keep if he plays the whole game, I'd be like, yeah, but I mean, he doesn't throw for a ton of yards. He's usually around the 240 for a game, so he's going to need a big half for you to get there.
That's the hope. That's the hope. Massive sports night tonight, as I mentioned on the Boston Pizza scoreboard. There is plenty to get ready for tonight. We'll start it off with this NFL game. This line hasn't moved pretty much all week. Patriots opened up at -6.5. Although Falcons now even money at +6.5. Would not be surprised if that number got to 7, because a lot of the people that'll be betting close to the game will probably be jumping on New England with the way they played as of late. I'm taking the under 47 on this one. Definitely after what's happened to favorites, especially road favorites the last couple of weeks, I'm staying far away from the New England -6.5, despite the fact that their defense has been so good. I think they've only given up single digits in the last couple games, and Atlanta's coming off an embarrassing 40-point loss to the Dallas Cowboys. But every time you think you figure teams out, we get the exact reversal. That's why underdogs, I think, are 28-14 against the spread in the last couple weeks. So NFL starting at 7:20, and then 8 o'clock tonight, the Jets and the Edmonton Oilers. And Jets, a pretty significant underdog. They were a very slight underdog to Edmonton on Tuesday, +137 in the rematch. And the Oilers, with apparently Skinner starting, -161. So if you do like the Jets' chances tonight, some pretty good value at the +137. A ton of games tonight. Got a good night to make a parlay tonight, Reem. You're looking at the slate. Any games that sort of stick out to you other than the Jets Oilers, which we'll all be paying attention to at 8 o'clock?
I was reading Dom's write-up in The Athletic, and he is very heavy on the Minnesota Wild against the Dallas Stars. So I tend to go with him.
Dallas is not that good.
Yeah, I think they've had trouble scoring. So I would go there. I'm not really sure. I did do my my DraftKings picks. So I keep seeing Chris Meany. We've had him on the show. We keep saying bet Troy Terry to score a point on this.
Yeah,
streak.
over a half a point every week. And the other one that Meany really hits and has been hitting hard that has been cashing is Pierre-Luc Dubois over 2.5 shots per game. He's getting the ice time, he's getting the opportunity, and he's shooting the puck. And that one has hit, I want to say 6 or 7 of the last few games, 10 games.
I've seen a lot of sharp people on Twitter just saying find a player and you can get these 2.5 shots per game props, which seem beatable. And to me, I mean, the props are more beatable than betting just like straight up. I feel like the Vegas, they know what they're doing when they're setting these lines. And they're tough to beat, but maybe you can find an edge on props.
Yeah, Dubois is minus 115 to go over 2.5 shots.
I like that.
Yeah, the Ehlers is minus 200 on over 2.5 because Ehlers has been shooting the puck quite a bit. And let's see, Mark Scheifele over on shots 2.5 is plus 130 on the over.
Do it. That's a good one.
Blake Wheeler plus 135 on the over. Kyle Connor even money. Although the Kyle Connor number is about even money on over 3.5. So, but anyways, the Jets have been making some money for people that have been backing them over the last few weeks, as well as on some of those props. If you haven't already, check out coolbet.com. You can get a WST bump. A 100% bonus on your first deposit up to $200. Just make sure you use the promo code WST. And while you're there, I've been mentioning we'll be doing some special Princess Auto curling reports. I'm going to be out in Saskatoon doing the show with Remis all next week. And it all gets going on the weekend. Couple really cool. Oh, wow. This number that we gave out right at the start when they dropped it, they've got the province to win the women's trials. And of course, Manitoba's got 3 entries: Tracy Fleury, Carrie Einerson, and Jen Jones. It was minus 179 to start. It was minus 200 yesterday. It's now minus 244. And it's amazing. I mean, Carrie Einerson and Jennifer Jones are the most decorated teams, but it's Tracy Fleury's team that is in fact the favorite to outright win the event. Tracy Fleury out of East St. Paul. And what a great story that would be. Plus 150. Rachel Homan next at 235. Carrie Einerson at plus 245. And then a big gap. Jen Jones more than 8-1 right now. And she opened right around 5-1. So obviously the steam is on those top 3 teams. 2 of the 3 being Manitoba teams. So that would make a kind of the reason why we're seeing now such a big number on the Manitoba to win it. As far as the men's outright, Brad Gushue now a minus 110 favorite. That's sort of stunning when you think about how strong this field is. Brad Jacobs, second at plus 265, and then Kevin Cooey at plus 520. Brendan Botcher, plus 595, and then all the other teams, I mean, way back. Mike McEwen, 17-1. They, of course, were 1 shot away from being the Olympic representative last time around. And our guy gunner, Jason Gunlickson, want to get a little Cinderella story action going on? 61-1. John Epping, 65-1. And Tanner Horgan, 88-1. So bit chalky at the top of the men's side. It's all there. Coolbet Canada, of course, TSN will have all the action beginning on the weekend. And I'll be joining Michael Remis from Saskatoon from Monday until Friday until Winnipeg Sports Talk. And again, if you are into curling, make sure to follow me on Twitter at Hustlerama and Instagram and Coolbet Canada. Chris Abbott and I will be doing a bunch of content from Saskatoon in between draws, updating you on odds, talking to some of the athletes. Should be a really fun weekend. Remo, going to be a great night tonight. I mean, we've got this football game starting off like a bit of an appetizer. And then, got to tell you, I mean, Jet fans justifiably very excited to see whether the team might be able to pull off the sweep of the series. I said coming in, if you can win a game, you'll be happy. If you can get 3 points, it would be great. Now for the Winnipeg Jets, the way they played on Tuesday night, it's time to get greedy and see if you can win them both and then move on for tomorrow's game in Vancouver with 4 points already in your pocket from this week.
Yeah, for sure. I'm I'm looking forward to Friday against Vancouver. I know we have a conversation planned with Matt Sakaris. I'm really enjoying what's going on from afar there with Vancouver. So I think win one today. Mitchell Clinton tweeted out that it's Connor Hellebuyck in his regular starters routine. So I'm expecting the same lineup, and we'll see from Edmonton. There was some chatter, Jeff Hamilton in a media scrum with McDavid, where they're asking McDavid about how he's upset he's not getting the calls, and I would agree. McDavid, I mean, he's drawing penalties. They're not getting called against him. And McDavid's line was what it says. Given all the talk about his play, the minutes he logs, but the few, by comparison to others, penalties he draws, if he felt he deserved more calls, McDavid says, guess I just got to shut up about it. And then he tried to expand and then shrugged. I mean, it's not his fault. He's so much better than everyone.
Maybe he's got to work harder. Work harder, grind out, force them to take penalties on you. I'm joking, of course.
I'm on team McDavid for this one. Protect the star players. Call the penalties. If it's a penalty, just call it. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, are you referring to any? Like, people always talk about this, but then they don't cite any everything. Like I would be here for the conversation a lot more if you're giving us a video of 15, things that should be called that aren't being called. But
you can go one game and make a video. I'll do it if you want. I'll go find last game and
I would buy that a lot more. I mean, I don't know. I still think that the refs are always looking at Connor McDavid and what he's able to do, and that if you get a penalty on him, they'll call it. But
well, where's the Oilers social media team putting out videos of this? What are they? Carolina's social media team would be all over it.
They're too occupied. Neil Pionk also living rent free in the social media team's head, not just Connor McDavid and the rest of the Edmonton Oilers.
Yes, exactly. Hey, before we wrap up, I wanted to bring this up with you, Huss. I was watching the Kings game last night.
Oh. The helmets.
Yes, here it is. They were wearing these beautiful, I think, silver chrome helmets that were so shiny. They looked like that. Who's that guy from the cartoon? Gazoo? He's got that big helmet. They looked like astronauts on the ice. I was a big fan of the Vegas gold helmets. I thought they were cool. I had a hard time with these. I think I like them. We're talking about them, so they must be good, right?
I imagine everyone hates them. Let's just see.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Possibly Cyclones. Helmets are awful. Weird helmet. Helmets ugly.
Here.
Those helmets, yikes. You know what? I'm in the minority. I love these gaudy helmets. I thought that the gold helmets of Vegas were awesome last year, and you know what? I don't know. I think those they're flashy, a little cool. At least the Kings have been winning games because I mean, if you were if the Coyotes dropped something like this right now, by the way, Coyotes beat the Blues on Tuesday. We should do a special, something special when the Coyotes win games because of how infrequently it's happening this year. Win number 2 on the season, now 2-13-1 after that big win. But yes, I'm here for them. Although maybe in limited doses.
Well, they were rocking the 90s Kings logo. I love that jersey, the Gretzky era. I'm a big fan. And I know you want to see this as Bar Down did a mock-up. What if other teams wore chrome helmets? And here's Andrew Kopp with a red chrome dome.
Ooh.
I would like to see I remember the Jets 1.0 in the 90s wore red helmets at one point. I would like to see them bring back. I remember thinking it was ridiculous at the time. I think I'm here for red helmets once in a while, throw out the red helmet. So I think this one better than the silver one. Do it one game. I think one game.
Be neat. Hey, listen,
sorry, I'm laughing at the chat. Someone says it looks like a Christmas ornament.
Yes, that's actually a great analogy.
Yeah.
Hey, we do have to, I just want to thank everyone, especially all the regulars that joined us a little earlier today. Just due to a couple things, we had to do the show earlier today. So we do appreciate everyone. If you've come afterwards and are seeing the replay, thanks so much. Everyone with us now, if you wouldn't mind hitting that thumbs up button, that's appreciated. And you can always do that if you're watching the replay afterwards. And a special welcome to those that normally maybe are tied up later in the afternoon that were able to join us on their lunch hour. Do us a favor, hit that red subscribe button and join us when you can live on Winnipeg Sports Talk, normally live at 1 p.m. every weekday. And of course, you can pick it up on your podcast feed wherever you're getting it. And today's a good day, if you're already a YouTube subscriber, just to turn the notifications on. You get a reminder when we go live, especially when we do go at a alternate time, which happens occasionally, but we did it today. Good news is you got a couple extra hours to consume all the content before we drop the puck tonight at 8 o'clock between the Jets and the Edmonton Oilers. And we go from Edmonton to Vancouver tomorrow, another game day. Remis just mentioned it. Matt Sakaris, our good friend, another TSN orphan doing great things on the internet with Sakaris and Price. He will join us. We'll have a weekly visit with Weeb's World himself, Ken Weeb. And I think we'll also have time for a little Lee Hacksaw Hamilton tomorrow. So really looking forward to tomorrow's program. Again, thanks to everyone who joined us at this unusually early time today. It was great to have you with us. The chat was still bumping. Wasn't sure how many of you'd be able to make it. Great to see you all here. And a huge thanks to all of our sponsors: Vita Health, Fresh Market, Culligan Water, Manitoba Battery, Royal Sports, Not Autocorp, Little Brown Jug, Princess Auto, Boston Pizza, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Coolbet Canada, and of course, Canadian Club. And tomorrow's Friday, and that means a CC giveaway and another hoodie with the world-famous WST marble race at the end of tomorrow's show. For Michael Remis, I'm Andrew Paterson. Have a great night. Enjoy the games, and we'll talk all about it tomorrow. Break it down and get you ready for the Jets and Vancouver Canucks tomorrow on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Have a great night, everybody.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.